Welcome back to Galaxy Recaps. Today we'll be diving into an action thriller film titled Avengement. Enjoy the recap. The movie begins on a somber, cloudy day as Cain, a hardened prisoner, is escorted under heavy security to visit his ailing mother at the hospital. Upon reaching her room, he's crushed to discover that she's already passed away. Grief-stricken, he regrets not arriving in time to say his final goodbye. In a sudden turn of events, the guards are taken down, and Cain seizes the opportunity to escape. Without hesitation, he makes a break for the exit and soon finds refuge in a nearby bar. A few guards try to apprehend him, but Cain swiftly takes them down, barely breaking a sweat. Confident and unbothered, he enters the bar, orders a drink from the talkative bartender Bez, and listens closely to the conversation happening nearby. A small gang, sitting together, is discussing the recent murder of one of their own, a man named Rook, and the mysterious disappearance of their accountant. One of the gang members, Tun, recalls the fateful night Rook was killed. He describes a drug deal gone wrong, interrupted by a shadowy figure. Rook confronted the figure, only to have his hand brutally hacked off by an axe. Tun claims he chased the attacker away, but when he returned, Rook was already dead. Cain, unable to contain himself, bursts into mocking laughter. He accuses Tun of being a coward who fled in fear. Infuriated, Tun and the rest of the gang rise, ready to defend his honor. But before they can act, Cain drops a bombshell. He's the one who killed Rook. He recounts the event with cold precision, calling out Tun for running scared that night. Shaken by this revelation, the gang falters, while Bez yells at Cain to get out. As the tension builds, the bar's bouncer charges at Cain, but Cain coolly draws a double-barreled shotgun, effortlessly taking control of the situation. He subdues the bouncer in an instant, asserting his dominance over the room. Cain demands to know the whereabouts of their leader, and moments later, Hyde, their boss, steps out from a back room. Hyde recognizes Cain immediately and casually introduces him as his brother, who went astray and ended up in prison. Hyde taunts Cain about his scars, hinting at the brutal punishments he must have endured behind bars. Despite the tension, Hyde is skeptical of Cain's claim to have killed Rook, preferring to believe Tun's story. Cain, determined to prove his point, pulls out a gruesome piece of evidence, Rook's severed hand, preserved in a plastic bag. The room falls silent as the gang members freeze in horror. With undeniable proof in front of them, they submit to Cain's authority. Enraged, Cain slaps Hyde and forces him to call their brother Lincoln to the bar. As they wait, Cain begins recounting his past. Years ago, Cain, a boxer, and his brother Lincoln, a loan shark, crossed paths over a business proposition. Cain had approached Lincoln for funds to start a business, but Lincoln hesitated, busy playing cards with Rook, their accountant Stokes, and others. They had all lost money betting against Cain, expecting him to throw a fight, but Cain had won instead. Rook mocked Cain, calling him worthless, and Lincoln, citing Cain's troubled past, refused to lend him any money. As Cain turned to leave, Lincoln offered a deal. He'd give Cain the money in exchange for completing a job. Desperate, Cain agreed without asking about the job's details. When Cain later visited Hyde's office to learn more, Hyde told him the task was simple. Follow a woman leaving the office that day, steal a plastic bag she was carrying, and bring it back. Cain, unaware of the storm he's about to unleash, pulls off the heist as planned. Shortly after, he's caught and sent to Belmarsh Prison, a place so brutal it's called the meat grinder. The conditions are harsh, especially for someone like Cain with no prior criminal record. On his first day, a massive inmate confronts him for no apparent reason, and a fierce one-on-one fight breaks out. Despite holding his own for a while, Cain finds himself pinned down but manages to turn the tables, beating his opponent senseless, until he's stabbed from behind. The prison erupts into a full-scale brawl, and although Cain fights valiantly, he's eventually overpowered and has his front teeth shattered. The grim outcome, metal dentures, which unexpectedly give him a more menacing appearance. While Cain endures the brutal prison life, his mother, Mrs. Burgess, visits him with distressing news. Lincoln, his own brother, blames Cain for his imprisonment and refuses to offer any help. This betrayal cuts Cain deeply, as he had been loyal to Lincoln, even though it was Lincoln's decisions that landed him behind bars. Despite the pain, Cain remains hopeful, asking his mother to make sure Lincoln reaches out, but days turn into weeks, then months, nothing. No letters, no calls, no visits. Cain is left to face the harsh reality. He's completely on his own. As if the betrayal wasn't enough, two inmates target Cain, underestimating his resilience. Cain, now hardened by prison life, overpowers them with ease. but the fight gets him hauled before the warden, who reprimands him for the chaos he's been causing as a new inmate. Cain snaps back, claiming self-defense, but the warden coldly informs him that his trial is still a year away. Determined to survive, Cain throws himself into intense physical and mental training, preparing for whatever comes his way. His training pays off when one day in the yard he's attacked by 2 more inmates. Cain takes them down swiftly, leaving them bloodied and beaten. As he catches his breath, one of the attackers delivers a chilling revelation. Cain's own brother, Lincoln, has placed a 20,000-pound bounty on his head. In that moment, everything clicks. The relentless attacks, the cold silence from Lincoln. The betrayal runs deeper than Cain had imagined. Learning about the bounty on his head lit a fire within Cain, giving him a new purpose: revenge. The allure of the prize money drew a constant stream of inmates to challenge him, but each confrontation only made Cain stronger and more relentless. Every fight left its mark, physically with new scars and mentally with hardened resolve. His battles added more time to his sentence and led to extended isolation, but that didn't stop him. The attacks grew more vicious as desperate inmates, eager to claim the bounty, resorted to extreme measures. In one brutal assault, they used makeshift napalm, leaving Cain's face severely burned. His once familiar appearance was now a twisted, unrecognizable reflection of the relentless force he had become. Cain's focus on survival became all-consuming. He spared no one, guards included. Many of them suffered injuries at his hands, adding to the violent cycle that dominated his life for 3 long years. One day, Cain received a visit from his mother, bringing heartbreaking news. She had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and their time together was limited. The news devastated Cain, especially since he had kept Lincoln's betrayal from her. She was his confidant, and now he had to carry this secret alone. Shortly after, Cain was granted permission to visit her in the hospital, but she passed away before he could say a proper goodbye. When Cain later recounted his escape from prison to his gangster acquaintances, they were mesmerized by the story. He described how, even with handcuffs on, he managed to overpower 2 police officers in an elevator, using nothing but his head to take them down, and secured his freedom. Listening to the story, Hyde couldn't help but admire Cain's sheer strength and resilience. As Cain finished his tale, 2 gang members shifted uneasily, asking for permission to use the restroom. With a cold, commanding tone, Cain ordered them, "Do it here." As Cain's story draws to a close, Hyde, who has been quietly enduring it all, finally snaps. His patience worn thin, he challenges Cain, taunting him to make his move. Cain doesn't hesitate. He forces Hyde to his knees with brutal efficiency, delivering a chilling warning about the weight of his next words. The tension in the room reminds Cain of the day he was arrested, replaying the moment in his mind. It all began when Cain spotted the woman holding the package he was tasked to steal. The moment he snatched it, he realized she wasn't just any bystander. She chased after him with a desperate determination, as if her life depended on it. Cain, initially mocking her during the chase, was horrified when she was struck by a car and killed in front of his eyes. Stunned, he was arrested on the spot by nearby officers. A few days later, Cain had a conversation with Detective O'Hara, a sharp investigator who had been tracking his brother Lincoln for some time. O'Hara revealed that Lincoln was deeply involved in a shady loan operation. The scam worked like this. They'd lend money to someone, then threaten the person's family, demanding payment with the looming threat of violence. Out of fear, the families would borrow money themselves only to be robbed by Lincoln's goons before they could even use it. The vicious cycle plunged these victims deeper into debt, and before long, Lincoln and his crew took everything they owned: homes, cars, and even their savings. Despite O'Hara's attempt to get Cain to turn on his brother, Cain remained loyal. He wasn't ready to betray his family, even as he became entangled in robbery, manslaughter, and organized crime. That's when Sergeant Evans entered the picture, a mean, burly interrogator known for roughing up suspects. Evans didn't wait for orders. He went straight for the fists, pummeling Cain while he was tied up. Though Cain tried to resist, Evans' blows left him unconscious. When Cain came to, Lincoln had arrived with 3 of his men. Clearly not expecting to see his brother, Lincoln put on a friendly face, trying to play it cool with a "Hey, welcome back." But Cain wasn't buying it. In that moment, he saw his worst enemy standing before him. Swiftly, Cain disarmed Lincoln and his men, turning the tables on them and sending them to join the rest of the gang. Before making his next move, Cain demanded answers. He wanted to know why Lincoln had tried to get rid of him. After some dramatic brotherly tension, Lincoln finally confessed. He'd heard from a spy that Cain was planning to betray the operation, and out of fear for his own empire, he decided Cain had to go. Cain, now piecing everything together, realizes that Sergeant Evans was the mole feeding Lincoln false information. He turns to Lincoln and says coldly, "You trusted a dirty cop over your own brother. And guess what? That cop's been fired." Cain's anger flares as he recalls the brutal 7 years he endured in prison because of Lincoln's betrayal. As Lincoln tries to call Evans for backup, Cain chuckles darkly and reveals the truth. He had hunted Evans down, making sure the corrupt cop knew exactly who was coming for him. Their face-off ended with Cain's newfound strength overpowering Evans, the final blow being a hammer strike to the head. Shocked by Cain's strength and cunning, Lincoln scrambles to make amends, offering Cain a chance to start fresh. But Cain isn't interested in his brother's sweet talk. Without hesitation, he turns and delivers a fatal blow to Hyde. The gang, watching in stunned silence, is left reeling as Hyde's death sends shockwaves through the room. Lincoln, still processing the loss of his most trusted ally, gets hit with more devastating news. Most of his wealth is gone. Out of all his riches, only 1,500 pounds remain. Stunned, Lincoln asks how this happened. Cain reveals that after taking down Evans, he paid a visit to Stokes, Lincoln's accountant. Recalling their encounter, Cain tells how Stokes tried to intimidate him with a shotgun, but Cain was unfazed. Instead of killing him, Cain forced Stokes into a deal: spare his life in exchange for transferring the entire £2.2 million from Lincoln's account to the families that had suffered because of Lincoln's dirty loan operations. Now all Lincoln has left is his dwindling crew. Desperate, Lincoln mentions how he knew the names of the families Cain had helped. Cain responds with cold determination, explaining that during his long nights in solitary confinement, he wrote down the names of every victim. Those names became his lifeline, his driving force. Even if his own life was ruined beyond repair, Cain found purpose in making things right for the families Lincoln had wronged. In doing so, everything he'd been through felt worthwhile. As Cain reflects on his actions, Detective O'Hara visits him in the hospital where he's recovering. During their conversation, Cain realizes something even more unsettling. Sergeant Evans, the man who had brutalized him during interrogation, had been working as Lincoln's spy the whole time. The pieces of betrayal fall into place, but Cain knows he's already set things straight in the only way he knows how. Given the situation, Detective O'Hara once again urges Cain to turn on Lincoln. Cain, thinking of his late mother and everything that's happened, agrees on one condition: he must visit his mother's hospital room first. Unbeknownst to O'Hara, this visit sets the stage for Cain's daring escape. Lincoln, believing that this will be the night Cain meets his end, feels confident. After all, Cain is outnumbered 10-1 and only has 2 bullets left. Yet with calm resolve, Cain states that he only needs 1 bullet, and it's reserved for Lincoln. Lincoln, trying to gain the upper hand, taunts Cain, distracting him long enough for Bez to sneak up and smash a bottle over Cain's head. Cain staggers but manages to fire a shot, taking out one of the gangsters before getting swarmed by the rest. Realizing they can't take him down in a straightforward fistfight, the gang resorts to throwing glasses and bottles at him. Bez arms them with a bag full of iron rods, hammers, and knives, hoping these weapons will be enough to overpower Cain. But Cain's resilience and combat skills prove too much for them. He fends off each attack, pushing back against the gang despite their dangerous arsenal. When things seem dire for the gang, Tun flees the scene only to return moments later with a submachine gun. Ironically, his terrible aim causes him to hit more of his own crew than Cain. Seizing the moment, Cain grabs the gun from Tun and takes out more of his adversaries. The remaining gang members, desperate, throw everything they have at Cain: kicks, punches, knives. But it's futile. One by one they fall. An arm snapped, a head smashed, a neck viciously bitten, and others taken down with savage stabs. In the end, only 3 remain standing: Bez, Lincoln, and an unstoppable Cain. Lincoln, holding Cain at gunpoint with a shotgun, reveals the true reason for his betrayal. It wasn't out of fear that Cain would turn on him, but rather envy. Cain's growing reputation was overshadowing Lincoln among their associates. Feeling confident, Lincoln pulls the trigger, only to realize the shotgun is empty. Enraged, Lincoln grabs a knife from Bez and lunges at Cain. The two engage in a fierce knife fight, each blow more lethal than the last. But in the end, Cain overpowers Lincoln, delivering the fatal blow. As for Bez, though she had ill intentions, Cain chooses to spare her. He leaves her amidst the fallen, a stark reminder of the loyalty she had shown to Lincoln. In that moment, Cain walks away, his mission complete. Later, we see one of Lincoln's former victims checking their bank account, pleasantly surprised by a new balance. It's clear Cain, in his own way, has tried to right some of Lincoln's wrongs by redistributing his wealth to those who suffered. Cain, now feeling a sense of closure, has not only avenged his mother and settled his own past, but also brought justice to Lincoln's victims, including Detective O'Hara, who finally finds some semblance of peace knowing that justice in its own brutal way has been served. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.